Right, let's bring in some reaction now. Political analyst Dr. Ebrahim Harvey joins us to expand on this conversation. Dr. Ebrahim, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, just watching the previous package that played now, we see a young man really upset, a scuffle breaking out during the door-to-door visit in Khayelitsha. What was your first reaction when you saw that?
Well, that is clearly some chaos there, I don't know to what extent it's reflective of the mood or what the situation is in the run-up to the January 8th statement, But that for me was of less significance. I think it's what's happening around the ANC and prior to this January 8th. I think this January 8th statement for the first time in post-apartheid South Africa is going to be undermined seriously by the fact that the ANC just emerges late May last year, with the first defeat of an election, in post-apartheid South Africa. And it seems, we're sitting with the biggest crisis ever in post-apartheid, so both socioeconomic and political. So those are the bigger issues. And then the SACP, who has decided as a result of the very poor performance, 40% of the ANC, that they're going to contest next year's local government elections independently on their own. And you can see how deeply worried Ramaphosa and the ANC is, and they're urging that this doesn't happen, but it's clearly going to happen. It's a decision that, the General Secretary of the SACP has said they're not turning back on. So I think the ANC is sitting with some very serious problems, that's going to probably mar and undermine, the celebration of this January 8th statement. And the venue that they chose in Khayelitsha, apparently 1,500 to 2,000, the smallest celebration in post-apartheid South Africa, or what is traditionally a hugely important day, the January 8th statement. So I think it's taking place within a context, which is reflecting a very major political decline of the ANC's influence. And I think it influenced the SACP to go it on its own, in the 2026 local government elections.
Yeah. As you speak about the SACP, I would imagine that one of the tasks of the traditional January 8th statement message will be to try and set the right tone. I mean, aspects like the strained relationship with the SACP and their opposition to the current GNU is something that we heard a lot of yesterday as President Cyril Ramaphosa delivered his message on that stage. How important do you think the tone will be considering relations within the alliance?
No, of major importance. The SACP and COSATU have equally, probably the SACP more vocal about now, from the time that the GNU was constituted 6-7 months ago, they have been very vocal, strongly expressing their opposition to the ANC forming this effectively coalition government with the DA. So one has to see to what extent that the ANC now having to share power with the DA and about 3-4 other parties in the GNU, how much that new terrain and setting will influence the January 8th statement and what they have to say, and also how they will address the concerns that their alliance partners have expressed about their, coalition government with the DA. So it will be interesting to see whether Ramaphosa will be delivering that January 8th statement, whether and to what extent he addresses these concerns, especially around the GNU and the COSATU and the SACP being very vocal in their opposition, which in fact I think informed their decision to go it alone in next year's election. So there's a whole different set of circumstances that's prevailing at this juncture, and it's the most crisis-ridden conjuncture in post-apartheid South Africa. Everything is collapsing. Infrastructure, the state doesn't even have the money to fix ailing infrastructure. So you look at Joburg, it's a mess. The townships, it's just the biggest mess. And so, probably reflected also in how voters feel about the ANC when they lost the 29th May 2024 elections. So one would like to see, what transpires in this speech. But I'll tell you something, it's taking place against the background of a very serious decline in the ANC's power, very clearly.
Yeah, as you say that President Ramaphosa will be facing ANC supporters at the Khayelitsha Stadium in Cape Town this Saturday. And with that in mind, one cannot ignore the fact that the stadium has a capacity of 22,000. That's a far cry from the 100,000 F&B stadium capacity, which where the event was held in previous years. What does that tell us about the loopholes as we reflect on what happened last year during elections and, of course, looking to the 2026 local government elections?
No, there's a whole lot of reasons that contributed, I think. Who knows? The ANC is going through so much problems at the moment and headaches that it might even be a lack of funds, that influence. I mean, having this January 8th thing in Khayelitsha, I thought it's less, but even if you speak of 22,000+, it's very little compared to the massive stadiums that they filled with January 8th celebrations in previous years and even last year.
Yeah.
So it also might be an indication, of the morale. There's a massive loss of morale in the ANC. There's no doubt that they lost for the first time, 29th of May election results last year, has had a massively negative effect, on the mood in the ANC, and it might be also a reflection of growing financial problems, that they suffered from for a long time, and who knows now with the loss of power, there might be also financial constraints which may inform this very limited, relatively, celebrations that they're having in Khayelitsha compared to what they had in previous years, So it's a combination of reasons that is contributing to a very different set of circumstances and a gloomy mood throughout the country. People are very despondent. There we had another petrol price increase, the biggest cost of living crisis ever in post-apartheid South Africa. The ANC is sitting with many problems, and not least of all, the Bella Act. We see how the GNU, although they've agreed to sign it into to make it legislation, but the important thing is whether a regulatory framework to address the Bella Act is going to be able to deal with what appears to be fundamental policy difference around Bella. And then there's the NHI, what's going to happen, with the NHI and the problems that the DA in particular has with the NHI. So the GNU and the politics and differences in the GNU will probably have to feature, and whether it will in Ramaphosa's speech, we don't know until, we hear what he actually has to say.
And very lastly, I mean, what about the other bigger leadership issues that are taking place in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal that the ANC leadership needs to confront? Those decisions both hang in the balance. The final decision was actually put off last year. How significant is a decision, more so as we consider the impact it could have on the entire dynamic of the coalition?
No, definitely, your question is very valid in terms even of the performance of the ANC in next year's local government elections, because there's no doubt they have very serious rupturing problems in both KZN and Gauteng. And, both are major important regions. So how are they going to deal with that? And also very importantly, very importantly, I must stress, is Panyaza Lesufi. You can see the ANC in Gauteng and in other regions being very seriously affected by and upset with this government of national unity that brought together the ANC and the DA in particular. And I think those, and SACP, COSATU, so how the Ramaphosa and the ANC is going to marshal and deal with and respond to this growing crisis, which in fact, to be honest with you, might bring the GNU to a standstill. It might be the biggest setback the GNU has faced, not so much coming from the NHI and Bella Acts, but the political opposition that is building up within the ANC and with the alliance partners against the GNU and the ANC's alliance and coalition with the DA in particular. That is major problems, and I don't know how the ANC is going to deal with that, and how Ramaphosa will articulate these problems and tensions and crises that's emerging within the GNU.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening, political analyst Dr. Ebrahim Harvey, expanding on the conversation as we look to the January 8 statement.